Good day and welcome to the 2030 Climate Challenge pre-registration webinar. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Talia Gibbous. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar for the 2030 Climate Challenge. This is Talia Gibbous, Program Officer with Common Pool, the agency that is supporting Lever for Change and the competition sponsor for this competition. As was mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the News and Updates page of the competition website, 2030climatechallenge.org, by the end of next week. We will also email it to those who have registered for the competition. We want to reserve the bulk of our time for your questions, so our agenda this morning is quite brief. We're going to start with an overview of the competition provided by Lever for Change. I will then do a quick walkthrough of the competition website with my colleague Ethan Matthews, and then my colleague Lynn Van Dievender will help open it up for questions. As those questions come up, please type them into the chat box and we will answer as many as we can within our allotted time. Remember, the deadline to register for the 2030 Climate Challenge is Thursday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific. You must register in order to submit an application. Looking ahead, please save the date of Wednesday, August 5th at 8 a.m. Pacific for our second Q&A webinar for this competition. That one will be open to registered applicants only and will include a technical demonstration of the application platform. We will also answer more of your questions. More details on that webinar will be emailed to registered applicants shortly after the July 23rd registration deadline. And again, if you have more questions after today's session, please email them to questions@2030climatechallenge.org. And with that, I'm pleased to turn things over to Muhsin Hassan, Awards Director at Lever for Change.
Thank you, Talia. Welcome again to the 2030 Climate Challenge Award pre-registration webinar. My name is Muhsin Hassan. I'm an Awards Director at Lever for Change. Lever for Change is an affiliate of MacArthur Foundation. Our mission is to unlock significant philanthropic capital and help bold philanthropists accelerate positive social change around the world's biggest challenges. Lever for Change manages the 2030 Climate Challenge Award on behalf of the donor. In the next few minutes, I'll give a brief overview of the award and speak briefly about the eligibility rules and scoring rubric. Should any questions arise as I speak, please feel free to type your questions in the chat and comments box. We've allocated the last portion of this webinar to answer your questions. So as you all know by now, the 2030 Climate Challenge Award seeks to award $10 million to proven data-driven solutions that are ready to serve as a model for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the United States by 2030. This challenge is specifically looking to support solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the buildings, industry, and/or transportation sectors. This award is sponsored by a donor who has chosen to remain anonymous at this point. However, should you proceed to the finalist stage and later stages of the competition, the donor will reveal themselves to those participants. To clarify, there will be a single award of $10 million payable over 5 years. Should you advance to the finalist stage and are selected as the awardee, you will enter into a separate grant agreement with the donor. In this grant agreement, specific details regarding the periodicity of payments, milestones, and reporting requirements will be outlined. We encourage you to please assess your fit for this award by filling out the organizational readiness tool and register by the deadline of Thursday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. The registration process is quick and very straightforward. Once you've registered, complete and submit your application by Thursday, August 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific. As you work on your application, please refer to the scoring rubric on the website. The rubric outlines the criteria upon which your proposal will be evaluated in the peer-to-peer review phase, as well as the evaluation panel, should you make it to that stage. As mentioned before, and as highlighted on the website, this challenge is open to any solution that is led by a nonprofit organization registered in the United States or a team that is led by a nonprofit organization. I encourage you to refer to the rules section of the document so you can clarify and ensure that your organization is eligible to participate in this competition. At this point, I'll talk a bit more about the criteria and what we would consider a strong proposal. There are 4 key criteria, each with a score of 1 to 5, as indicated on the website. The first criterion is impactful. This criterion really seeks to assess the evidence and strength of your solution, and as outlined, while you work on your application, ask yourself, does the proposal that you're outlining present evidence that your solution will actually decrease greenhouse gas emissions in the building, industry, or transportation sectors in the U.S.? Furthermore, is your solution sufficiently ambitious to achieve the proposed results, and does it outline a plan to measure and demonstrate results? As you can see from a score of 5, a strong proposal is really one that will be shown through rigorous evidence and one that is also driven by data and outlines a clear strategy that demonstrates a significant reduction in GHG emissions in one or more of the key sectors that we've outlined. We also expect or consider a strong proposal to demonstrate ambitious breadth and depth, as well as outline a robust measuring plan. This criterion is really ensuring that your solution is compelling and there is ample evidence that attests to the impact of your proposed strategy. I highly encourage you, as you work on your proposal after registration, to please continuously refer to the scoring rubric. The second criterion is feasible. This is really very straightforward. This criterion is really about your team's capacity to successfully implement your proposed solution, as well as an implementation plan that adequately addresses the risks and barriers. As you'll see from a score of 5, under this criterion, we really want to see the skills, capacity, as well as relationships that your team brings to the table. Do you have a team of accomplished experts with a demonstrated record of success, as well as a strong coalition of partners that also includes a detailed budget and a rigorous implementation plan? We recognize that the challenge we actually want to address is multifaceted, and that is why we highly encourage folks to think about partnerships and collaborations that will allow you to work efficiently and effectively across the various sectors or within the sector that you choose. The third criterion is scalability. We're really interested in a solution that has the potential to work in other contexts while still being effective. So this criterion aims to interrogate that regarding your proposed solution. In addition to being scalable in other contexts, a strong proposal will also include a solution that is indeed replicable and or well-positioned to become a model for other contexts, while being led by an organization or a team that is truly prepared to scale the solution. Again, please refer to the scoring rubric so you can see the various scores and the range under this criterion. A range of 5 indicates that a strong proposal will be one that is clearly adaptable, retains its effectiveness, and is easily replicable and has great potential to serve as a model while being led by an organization that has the capacity and is at the right moment in terms of its preparation to scale. Last but not least, the final criterion is durability or durable. A strong solution will be sustainable beyond the 5-year grant timeline. As you develop your proposal, you should ask yourself whether your proposed solution will create a lasting reduction in emissions in one or more of the key sectors that actually extends beyond the 5-year grant timeline. Additionally, do you outline a mitigation plan for risks associated with changes in key personnel in the political, market, or social environments? Since we launched in April, the pandemic has really turned the context in which you all are working, almost entirely upside down. And this is a chance for you to demonstrate that your solution is not only resilient, but that you also have a solid plan to withstand shocks and changes to the context, both due to internal and external factors. I'll now hand it back to Talia from Common Pool to explain in more detail other aspects of the competition process.
Thank you, Musin. So yes, we're now going to go over the competition process in some more detail and then also provide more of a walkthrough of the competition website. So we've mentioned a few times that registration is required in order for you to be able to submit an application, and that process is very simple. So to register, you can go to the upper right-hand corner of any page on the website and click on the button that says 28 days to register. You will then be instructed to create and confirm your account. After that, you'll be prompted to submit basic information about your organization so that we can better understand our registrant community. Important thing to note, you will not receive email confirmation of your registration. If you are able to access the online application and the forums on the back end of the platform, that means that you have registered properly for the competition. So this competition is rooted in the values of openness, transparency, and fairness. Our goal is to make sure that everyone who registers and applies for this opportunity knows exactly what we expect from them, when and how they're going to be scored, and who is going to be evaluating their solutions. The competition website is built as an instructional guide to help you understand that entire process. So Musin mentioned the organizational readiness tool, and that is your first step to determine whether or not you're a good fit from this opportunity. And that tool is accessible from the drop-down menu, as you can see. It will walk you through 8 questions. If you answer yes to each of those questions, then you are very likely prepared to submit a competitive application, and we encourage you to proceed to the registration process. If you answer no to any of these questions, then we encourage you to consider finding a partner organization that would help you become a stronger fit for this opportunity, or consider seeking out funding for your, from other sources for your particular project. So after you've completed this organizational readiness tool, assuming that you've answered yes to all the questions, your next best step is to review the application. The full text of the application is available for any visitor on the website. You'll be able to see all of the questions, the prompts, the requirements, and the word count limits. The application has 10 sections, and we encourage you to read through all of them so that you have a good grasp of what is required in order to submit. So once you've done that, you should have a very strong sense of what you need to do to apply. And the next question is how your application will be evaluated. So Musin talked at length about the scoring rubric, so I'll just touch on it briefly. So there are 4 traits that are listed on the rubric, and the site provides prompts that detail what each of those traits mean in this particular context. So you'll be able to toggle between a score of 0 and 5, and as you do that, you'll see you will see phrases that appear that provide further detail on what a high and low score means within the context of the 2030 Climate Challenge. And you are absolutely encouraged to study the scoring range definitions and use them to reverse engineer projects that align with the higher end of the rubric. So this rubric really defines what makes a strong proposal for this challenge, and it is also the same tool that peer-to-peer and evaluation panel judges will be using as they score their assigned applications. So that brings us to the actual scoring and evaluation process. So following the application deadline, the first round of evaluation is peer-to-peer review. Each lead applicant will score and comment on 5 applications from other organizations using that same scoring rubric that we just looked at. All applicants must participate in peer-to-peer review, reviewing and scoring 5 other applications in order to remain eligible for the competition. Once that process is complete, a subset of top scoring applications will move forward to the evaluation panel. And on the site, you will see a list of the confirmed evaluation panel members to date. So not only will you receive scores on your application from 5 of these individuals, but you'll also get feedback, because in addition to the numeric scores, all peer reviewers and evaluation panel judges are required to provide comments to justify each score and note their overall impression of each application. We've often found that feedback is one of the most important aspects of participating in our competitions for our applicants. Even if you're not selected as a finalist or awarded a grant, you walk away with valuable feedback that you can use to refine your solution and perhaps seek out funding or other funding or expanded support. So this brings us to another common question we receive. With so many different people participating in peer-to-peer and the evaluation panel process, what do we do to ensure that that process is fair? So to address that specific question, we have a web page dedicated specifically to explaining how we normalize the scores that you will receive. I mentioned that every application will be first scored by 5 fellow applicants, and then a subset will be scored by 5 members of our evaluation panel. What this means is that not every applicant and not every judge will look at every application. We make sure that you're not disadvantaged if by chance you are assigned to a hard grader and someone else is reviewed by a judge who tends to be a little bit more lenient. In brief, all scores are normalized. So if you scroll through the page that we are looking at right now, which you can access through the menu and clicking on level playing field, you can read a lot more details about how that particular process works. So there are a few other items on the website that I just want to point out to you. The first is the rules page. And that page provides all of the legal stipulations for teams that govern their participation. It also goes through the eligibility criteria and lays out all the terms and conditions required for everyone who's participating. And then we also have a timeline page that details each phase of the competition. As you've heard a few times, registration is required and it must be completed by Thursday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific in order for you to be able to submit a proposal. And then you're able to scroll through the timeline to see the other deadlines. The application deadline is Thursday, August 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then peer-to-peer review, which I mentioned is required for people to be able to advance to the next phase of the competition. That will take place over a period of 3 weeks beginning the second half of September. And we list the dates here in order to help you plan your time accordingly. Reviews will happen independently over this time, and applicants will be using our online scoring platform to evaluate and comment on their assigned applications. And then the timeline goes on to list all other key dates related to the competition, so we encourage you to take a look at that as you are able. This website also includes some other helpful areas like news and updates, which we will continue to post more information on as the competition progresses. And then also there is a Q&A section on the front homepage that outlines some of the most common questions that we receive about this competition. So we encourage you really to take your time to read over the website in its entirety. It contains a lot of useful information that will help you through this process. And with that, we'd love to move on to the open Q&A portion of the webinar. Please add your questions into the chat if you have not already, and we'll get to as many as possible. Please note that in order to ensure fairness, we are not able to provide guidance specific to your proposed solution. We encourage you to take the organizational readiness tool and also review all of the pages that we've talked about on the website to help determine if you are a strong fit for this competition. You're also always welcome to email us at questions@2030climatechallenge.org, and our team will respond. And with that, let's get started with questions.
Thank you, Tanya. So the first question is, does the energy sector fall under industry, or is the energy sector not covered?
That's a great question. So it firstly depends on what you mean or how you're defining by saying energy sector. If you mean power generation sector, electricity, so that is not covered under industry according to the parameters of this competition. However, if you mean energy use in the industry sector, such as energy use in cement production, for example, or other subsectors such as iron and steel, chemicals, paper and pulp, then those would be eligible and those would fall under the definition of industry.
Thank you, Mason. Can a nonprofit 501c6 apply?
I'm not sure on that. Could we get back to the applicant on that? As long as an entity has a tax determination letter from the IRS, they should be eligible to apply.
Yes, and if you could if that person could please send us a follow-up email at questions@2030climatechallenge.org, and we can get you a more specific response. The next couple of questions have to do with budget and the grant period. So should the budget be based on a 10-year period, and then to confirm that the grant will be for 5 years?
Yes. At this stage of the competition, we anticipate the grant to be over a 5-year period. As I mentioned, however, once a participant or an organization advances to later stages of the competition, the separate grant agreement that you will enter into with the donor will specify some of these details. And there will be some flexibility in regard to how the fund or the funds are dispersed. So there will be some flexibility in that area. However, at this stage, we do ask you to plan for a 5-year grant timeline, which would mean that your budget would be over 5 years.
Do we need to identify all partners at the time of registration, or can they be specified in the proposal due August 20th? Are partners locked in at the proposal phase, or may we add others as the project shifts to implementation?
That's a good question. The registration is really meant to ensure that the lead applicant is registered in the system and has access to the system. Nothing will be locked in terms of your application. Once you take a look at the registration form, you'll see it doesn't really ask about details regarding your proposal and your team. It's really just meant to ensure that the lead applicant is indeed an eligible lead applicant and qualified to participate. So in short, you're very welcome and free. We actually encourage you to do this. After registration, you can continue working on your application. You can continue to build collaborations and partnerships such that come application deadline in August, you will present a clear plan in your proposal.
Great. And then are they able to add partners post-submission?
Post-submission of the application?
Yes. Once during the implementation phase, do they have the flexibility to allow to add additional partners?
I see. Yes. I think at this point, we do ask you to outline your key partners in the application. If you go back to the application, you'll realize that we ask for specific, it's only a limited number of key partners and key personnel. We understand that given the changes in the context and the dynamics, especially in this moment that we're living in, flexibility might be required. So if an applicant does progress to the finalist stage, we will be working with you over a 3-month period to strengthen your capacity, build and strengthen your partnerships. So there's definitely room to add more partners at that stage.
Thank you. To confirm eligibility, startups or companies can only participate as partners to a nonprofit organization. They cannot, startups and for-profits cannot participate on their own or apply on their own. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Will proposals that address all 3 emission sources, buildings, transportation, and industry, be given priority, or will you consider proposals that only address 1 or 2?
Yes, we do not expect proposals to address all 3. These are, although there is overlap, these are distinct sectors. So a proposal that only addresses 1 sector, for example, would still be competitive, as long as you do, refer to the scoring rubric and make sure that you hit those points that we've outlined. But to clarify, the expectation is that you address 1 of these sectors and not, multiple sectors. But you can.
Why is the competition focused on these 3 sectors and not utilities or power sector? What does it look like to be focused on one of the 3 sectors listed versus working directly with utilities and PUCs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Okay, I see. So that's a great question. I think the United States over the last few years has achieved tremendous success and progress in reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the power sector specifically. And that is why this competition is focused on these other sectors, because to be able to tackle the challenge of climate change, we need to be able to address all these other sectors and ensure the progress is actually achieved.
Will the judges consider additional benefits of a proposal in addition to greenhouse gas reductions, for example, comprehensive, sustainable, and resilient outcomes, or will the focus be exclusive to greenhouse gas outcomes?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure. Basically, they're wondering if how the judges will evaluate the proposals and whether there are opportunities to outline benefits in addition to greenhouse gas reductions.
Okay, yeah.
Refer to the scoring rubric, I think, probably.
Yeah. No, I think judges will consider, benefits of a proposal in addition to greenhouse gas reductions. I mean, that will only strengthen your application. However, the scoring rubric is quite detailed and outlines, the key kind of focus areas that judges as well as peers will be looking at. So, if you stick to the scoring rubric, your proposal will be considered strong. If you're able to also demonstrate kind of positive externalities that emanate from your proposal, that will only strengthen your proposal. However, the scoring rubric is what will be the guiding document when it comes to judging and evaluating proposals.
Please confirm whether or not employee fringe benefits can be included in the total calculation of indirect costs.
Yes, so we have outlined a specific indirect cost policy, so I urge you to go back and refer to that. If you have specific questions, you can always reach out to us. But the indirect cost policy is on the website, so please refer to that.
Yes, and typically employee fringe benefits are included in indirect costs. The next one is a quick question about registration, and I can just speak to that. So the person is asking about walking us through registration. So we're not going to demonstrate that right now because Ethan has already registered on this version that he's looking at here. But all you need to do is go and click on that 28 days to register button. You will be asked to create a username and password. And then you will get an email asking you to confirm your email. Then you're able to log into the system and you'll be asked to accept the terms and conditions. And at that point, you'll enter into the dashboard and you'll be able to complete what we call step 1 of registration, which is step 2 of registration, which is basically your contact information. And then once you've completed that, you'll be able to go ahead and work on your application. It probably takes all of about 5 minutes to complete the registration process. So we encourage you to go ahead and do that if you haven't already, even if you're not certain that you're going to apply at this point. The next question is, does an application have to be national in scope, or is state-based or regional approach eligible?
Yes, a state-based or regional approach is eligible. We don't expect, a solution to be able to address all kind of geographic parts of the United States. However, we do welcome and encourage solutions that, seek to address more systemic challenges that, might be at the national level. Please also consider that one of the questions or one of the criterion on the scoring rubric is scalability. So while we don't expect your solution to be currently, working in, across all states in the United States, please, we do encourage you to outline. We encourage you to outline how, your proposed solution, even if it's currently in a state or in a specific region, could be scalable and could serve as a model to other parts of the United States.
Does the 25% threshold extend down to potential indirect costs built into subcontractor rates, or are subcontractor costs to be counted entirely as direct project costs?
So if a subcontractor is an essential partner in implementing the solution and to the success of your approach and strategy, that can be counted under direct project costs.
How many applicants do you expect?
We don't really have. Our competitions range. We get a whole kind of host of applications, so we can't really give a number as to how many we expect.
Should the budget be $10 million exactly?
Yes, the component of your strategy or solution that will be funded through this grant needs to be $10 million. However, it's okay to include a solution, for example, that you expect to leverage funding from other donors. However, we just ask you that you specify clearly what aspects of your solution might not be funded through this challenge. But for any components of your solution that you hope to receive funding through this challenge, we ask you that amount add up to $10 million.
And just to confirm again, the grantee would have 5 years to spend the award.
Yes.
Has the donor provided guidance on preferences for spending? For example, would references be preferentially be spent on human capital, physical assets, or both?
There's no preferences that have been outlined. Everything that would entail a strong proposal or strong solution has been outlined on the website. So if there's been no indication that there's a preference towards how you spend the solution, if we have a limit on advocacy or lobbying and other things, all those have been stated clearly in the rules. So I encourage you to go back and refer to the rules document. However, there are no preferences listed as to how a grantee should spend the money. We expect the funding to go towards the solution that you've outlined in your proposal.
Can part of your team be a startup company with new green technology?
Yes. As mentioned earlier, we encourage collaborations and partnerships. So if partnering with a startup is a way for you to kind of ensure innovation or an innovative strategy is built into your approach, that is welcome. The only requirement is that the lead applicant be an eligible registered entity with a tax determination letter from the IRS.
What do you mean by industry? Do you mean heavy industry, manufacturing, or do you mean the business sector generally?
As specified in my, I think the first question we had, by industry we mean heavy industry as well as manufacturing. So subsectors like cement production, pulp, and paper. We're not referring to the business industry.
Following up on the energy sector question, what about emissions in oil and gas production? Is this counted as industry?
Was the question whether, could you please repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes, of course. Following up on the energy sector question, what about emissions in oil and gas production? Is this counted as industry?
Let me please get back to you on that. I believe that is most likely under energy, but please send us an email at questions@2030climate and we'll send a clarification response.
Will the 2030 Climate Challenge facilitate connections between nonprofit and startup for-profit organizations developing climate change solutions?
Yes. As we mentioned, partnerships and collaborations are valued as part of level for change competitions overall. we give applicants this 3-month period between launch and application submission time. So specifically, one of the things we would like you to do is actually try to seek other partners as you think through your solution and build some of these collaborations. We do not provide an avenue for you to meet others who are also working in the sector at this point. We will be able to do that at later stages should your application advance to the finalist stage. At this point, however, we do leave it to the applicants and potential organizations to kind of do that outreach within the sector and try to come up with partnerships and collaborations that they think will help them be put forth a successful proposal.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if you are someone who's looking for a partner, there's some possibility that you might be able to find one within the back end of the system. So I do encourage you to go ahead and register, and then we have a forums section on the back end of the system that's only accessible to registered participants, and you could certainly post in there and mention that you're looking for partners. No guarantees, but that's another option. Do you expect the solution to be implemented by the end of the grant period? I.e., do you expect the grantee to deploy the technology or whatever solution they propose, or do you expect a plan but not actual deployment?
Yeah, we think the expectation is that you do have a plan that outlines how you will deploy, how you'll implement your solution. The 5-year period is what we expect to be the funding cycle at this stage. But if a solution will be implemented over a longer period, there is flexibility there. As I mentioned, the details on the implementation, the reporting mechanisms, or even outcomes and milestones will be specified if an application is actually selected in the separate grant agreement that you'll have to enter should you get to that stage.
Does the donor define the metrics by which significant greenhouse gas reduction will be measured?
That's a great question. So we don't have a threshold that we have specified, and this is deliberate. As you can see from the scoring rubric, what we have outlined is, showing through evidence and data in the sector that the impact that you're proposing is indeed achievable, and we will leave it up to the evaluation panel of experts that we've put together, to determine the significance of the approach that an applicant is proposing. We do not have a specific threshold, and we have not specified any thresholds, as you can see from the scoring rubric.
Right, next question. Does this have to be a solution that's happening now that you want to scale up, or can it be a combination of solutions, some happening, others not yet?
Yes, so we're looking for something that is scale ready, something that is also data driven and evidence based. So the solution needs to be an applicant needs to be able to demonstrate that the solution has achieved some success, and you are looking to scale it maybe beyond the geographies that it's being implemented, or even add to the the depth of some of the aspects of the intervention. We're not really looking for startup type ideas that are maybe in the research or incubation phase.
The evaluation panel includes some of our organization's current partners that we are considering reaching out to for this opportunity. Might this be a conflict of interest, or are the organizations listed on the evaluation panel not allowed to participate in this opportunity?
Could you please repeat that question again, then?
Yeah, basically, some of the they're wondering about conflict of interest for the evaluation panel, and if they were to reach out to an evaluation panel member that they already work with, if they're precluded from doing that, or whether the judge would have to recuse themselves.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a clear recusal policy that we communicate with our judges. We understand, a lot of the folks you've already seen on the evaluation panel are, leaders in the sector. We do not preclude a potential applicant from reaching out to the judges. So, feel free to do that. If a judge chooses to join an applicant team, for example, they're also free to do that. We'll just have the judge recuse themselves. We've also communicated this, to the judges, so they are aware of the recusal policies, and Love for Change will handle that. So on the applicant side, please don't worry about, the recusal policy. We have a clear policy that we communicate to our judges. We encourage you to think of, putting together the strongest possible application, and if that entails, having folks who are currently on the evaluation panel as your, on your team, then you're welcome to do that.
Would infrastructure like water treatment facilities, airports, transit facilities count as buildings, or is this focused only on commercial and residential buildings?
That's a great question. Let me get back to the applicant on this question. Right now, the kind of definition that we have of buildings would entail, energy emissions in buildings in both kind of commercial and residential. Depends on how you define some of these, entities that you've mentioned. I mean, some of them are commercial buildings, but we can give a more detailed answer through email. So please follow up with the specific question and clarify exactly what you're asking through questions at 2030climatechallenge.org.
Similar question about project eligibility. What about the intersection of energy and transportation and vehicle electrification?
Sorry, could you please repeat that question again?
Yeah, just in terms of eligibility of a project, is energy and transportation and vehicle electrification included in these sectors?
Yeah, so transportation is one of the key sectors that is included. So, if electric vehicles are part of that sector, so, if your solution seeks to address reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector, that would be eligible.
Back to the judges for a minute. Is it appropriate to reach out to receive feedback from the judges as we develop our proposals?
Again, yes, we don't want to, restrict the ability of the applicants to develop the strongest possible solution. As I mentioned, we do have clear recusal policies that we've communicated to our judges. So, one of that would include if a judge is part of an organization or has, ties to a certain organization, then, we would have to recuse them from at least, evaluating the proposal from the organization, with which the judge has ties. However, we do not want to restrict you. So if you do have ties to some of these judges and you're able to reach out to them for them to look at your application before you submit them, please feel free to do so. As we've mentioned, we want you to be able to develop the strongest possible solution and proposal, before you apply.
But Muhsin, just a clarifying question, that's only if they have existing relationships in place, correct? We do not want them to just reach out to judges as they're developing their proposals. That would be a conflict of interest. Yes, but that recusal and conflict of interest will be, it has been communicated to judges, so they will have to disclose that if they choose to actually, respond to some of these inquiries. I'm sorry, just to be clear. So if they do not have an existing relationship with a judge, I don't think it's okay for them to reach out to those judges, is it? I mean, they could. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think we don't want to restrict. Okay.
So that we're not going to provide judges contact information. So I'm assuming if they have relationships or are able to get in touch with some of these judges, we do ask our judges to reveal these types of engagements. So and if that happens, the judge will reveal them.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying. Back to project eligibility, would projects focusing on scaling decarbonization or energy efficiency in buildings be considered?
Yes, because that would be pertaining to the buildings sector.
The call refers to several SDGs. Is it important to tie the proposal to these SDGs?
By the call, do they mean the application?
The application. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the application.
Yes, I mean, we've outlined the SDGs. That's largely for our purposes in terms of tracking, internally and ensuring, we are kind of part of the global development agenda. However, there's no, obligation or requirement for you to, to tie what you are, doing to specific SDGs. I mean, climate challenge is one of the key kind of challenges that the whole globe faces. So if you're able to show how you are contributing to the, kind of achievement of SDGs, that's great. But the focus is really the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So, please, that really should be the guiding kind of, document, and especially in these three sectors that we've outlined.
Can you let us know who the donor is that's funding the challenge?
So sorry, did they ask who the donor is?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. So as mentioned, at the beginning of the call, at this point, the donor would be, it has chosen to remain anonymous at this stage, so we cannot disclose who the donor is.
If awarded, would we have any publication restrictions placed on us that we should be aware
of? Could you clarify what did you say? Publication restrictions?
Yes. If they want to publish their results, are there any restrictions around that lever for change where the donor might place on them?
Oh, yes. Okay. No, there are no restrictions if you want to publish results. We do have a policy on the website that outlines level for changes guidance on intellectual property and the treatment of intellectual property. So I urge you to go back and refer to that.
Is there an advantage for a high-profile national organization to lead a collaboration, or will the strengths of the whole package of partners be weighed equally?
That's a great question. Yes, as outlined in the scoring rubric, we are going to look at the strength and the comprehensive nature of a proposal. So there is no requirement that the lead applicant be a well-known national entity. We are looking for great ideas, and we understand that a lot of times that there's great work being done, but entities that might not well be as popular or as well known. So there's no obligation to enlist a national partner with a national reputation. Please just focus on the comprehensive nature of your application and your solution, and refer to the scoring rubric to ensure that it is indeed a strong proposal.
Can a private foundation apply as a lead applicant for a coalition of non-profit partners?
Was that a private foundation?
Yes, a private foundation.
Yes, a private foundation, should have a tax determination letter, so that is considered a nonprofit entity in the United States and would be eligible to serve as a lead applicant.
Are letters of commitment from partners required, or do they just need to be enlisted as partners?
At this stage of the competition, simply enlisting them as partners is enough. However, if you do proceed to the finalist stage, we will ask for follow-up materials, and some of these documents usually would entail letters of support, among other documents.
If we are a fiscally sponsored project of a 501c3, are other fiscally sponsored projects from the same 501c3 allowed to also apply?
That's a great question. So in terms of, that would fall under kind of multiple applications from the same organization. I again encourage you to go back to and refer to the rules. In cases where they are distinct and different, separate solutions or proposals that might be related to an organization with multiple affiliates. It is possible to do that as long as the registrant is from a separate email address and a unique individual. So please refer to the rules for more details on how to submit multiple applications that might be housed under the same kind of broad entity.
Are policy-focused approaches at the state and or local levels as welcome as project and program-focused approaches?
Yes, policy approaches are welcome and eligible.
Will the evaluation criteria solely focus on greenhouse gas reductions, or can other aspects like addressing racial equity be considered?
If you look at the application, we actually have a specific section where we ask you to outline how your solution addresses issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, racial equity, kind of environmental justice issues that pertain to, race, as well as other kind of factors that lead, to inequality, are going to be considered and are part of a strong, proposal.
When you ask, can the solution be adapted to other contexts? By other contexts, do you mean U.S. locations or contexts like other U.S. sectors?
At this point, we mean, other contexts as in other geographic, locations in the United States. But if a solution is also, able to be, replicated in other sectors, and you can demonstrate that, please feel free to do so.
Is this the only opportunity to participate in this challenge, or will the competition recur in future years?
At this point, this competition is only recurring this year. So, there's no commitment from the donor that this will be a recurring competition. If anything changes with regard to that, we'll make that announcement. But at this stage, this competition is only occurring in this year.
Does the strategy sort of back to, we just have a few minutes left here, so we'll try and squeeze in a few more questions here. Back to kind of project eligibility. Does a strategy that focuses on reducing HFCs count as greenhouse gas reduction?
Yes, that would be eligible, and that does count, as long as it's within these industries that we've outlined.
Are distributed building integrated microgrids considered part of the energy sector, or would they be allowable in the building sector?
Let me please get back to the applicant on that question. So we'll send you a response through email.
Yes, please send us an email at questions@2030climatechallenge.org. Are you actively discouraging approaches that span two sectors, transportation, for example, transportation and buildings versus single sector focused approaches?
Sorry, could you please repeat that question again?
Sure. Are you, basically they're wondering if it's better to just do one sector, a single sector approach, rather than multiple sectors in their proposal.
Yeah, I mean, there's, we can't really say, there is no, what is better is we do not, we are encouraging, multiple sectors. But, again, there is no, expectation that, a strong solution, be able to, have an impact across all sectors. So you are, again, it's okay, and you are welcome to focus on putting forth a strong proposal that might be, only focused on one sector. That is completely fine, and that would be considered a strong proposal as long as, again, you adhere to the kind of scoring rubric that we've outlined. We simply encourage you to think about the multi-sectoral, kind of factors and nature of some of the challenges. But there's no, obligation or requirement that a solution be across sectors.
Sure. Can we use the funding to revitalize a state economy that has been devastated by short-term extraction economics?
Yeah, I mean, so again, the proposal that we're seeking, as long as the solution pertains to the three sectors that we've outlined, and you can show, compellingly, through kind of the specific, points we've outlined in the scoring rubric especially, as to how revitalizing the state's economy, for example, would actually lead to a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in one of the sectors that we've outlined, either transportation, buildings, or industry. Then that would be eligible. So, as long as, this solution is relevant to the sectors, one of the sectors that we've outlined, and does so in a compelling nature, that would be an eligible and a competitive proposal.
Last question. Can a nonprofit electric co-op be the lead applicant?
A nonprofit electric co-op, as long as you have a tax determination letter from the IRS that attests to your registration or your entity being a nonprofit sector, then you are eligible to be a lead applicant.
Great. With that, I'm going to turn things back over to Talia.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful questions. So any additional questions that you have that we have not been able to answer, please email them to questions@2030climatechallenge.org. And if you haven't done so already, please complete the organizational readiness tool to find out if you're a strong fit for this competition. Again, the registration deadline is Thursday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific, and you must register in order to be eligible to submit an application. Recordings and transcripts of this webinar will be made available to registrants via email, and they'll be posted in the forums on the online application platform. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to learning more about your efforts, and then now I'll briefly turn things back to Lever for Change for closing remarks.
Thank you again. Thank you for registering, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. As Talia mentioned, the session has been recorded, and we'll be sharing the details shortly after this. We look forward to your participation, and we look forward to seeing the application that you will submit. So thank you once again, and have a good day.